Hi, I'm Lady Essie. You're watching AILTV. BB3D Media and AILTV have come together to bring you an event called Reconnecting the Diaspora. It's an event for people of African origin, wherever they're from, the Caribbean or Africa, wherever you are in the world, to come together to discuss the issues, the problems that we face as a people. It's about the stereotypes. It's about the disconnect between those from the Caribbean and those from Africa. How can we be more connected?
So I'm from Ghana, and a lot of them, their parents were like, I don't want you to marry anybody who's not a Ghanaian. It was like you had to marry a Ghanaian. You had to marry someone from the same place. You'd have the Jamaicans going, oh, the other small islands, all those small islands, you know, we're Jamaicans and those small islands, you know, and it's like, where are you from? And it was all those kind of stereotypes. How true are they still running today in this generation?
You raise a very important point there, because I remember those days as well. Being from the Caribbean, myself from Barbados, the stereotypes were quite rife within the Caribbean community about perceptions of Africa, normally fed through history.
I do a radio show called A More Knowledge Show with my co-host over there, DJ Supreme, and we were talking about it, and he goes, but what does diaspora mean? Because a lot of people may not know. Welcome to Reconnecting the Diaspora. I am Lady Essie, your host for this evening's event. Reconnecting the Diaspora is a discussion about how there is a disconnect between Africans and African Caribbeans. The focus of the discussion is to explore the myths, the realities, and the stereotypes that drives these perceptions. The idea is to have an honest and insightful dialogue that facilitates better understanding, which invariably opens the doors for greater cooperation and friendship. Before we get started, I want to give a definition of what the diaspora means. The African Union has defined the African diaspora as consisting of people of native African origin living outside the continent, irrespective of their citizenship and nationality, and who are willing to contribute to the development of the continent and the building of the African Union. It is a constitutive act declares that it shall invite and encourage the full participation of the African diaspora as an important part of our continent in the building of the African Union. So I'm now going to introduce the moderator for today, which is James B.
Yes, I'm your moderator for today. I'm just here to make sure that the conversation runs smooth and that there's a bit of fluency in there and that there's some order.
So I'm going to get the panel to introduce themselves and say what Reconnecting the Diaspora means to them as well. Sister Angie.
Greetings everyone, my name is Sister Angie. I am the co-founder of Agate Tours. We organise group trips to the continent, and I'm also the founder of Agate Global Ambassadors. We have a charity in the Gambia. What does Reconnecting the Diaspora mean to me? For me, it was about I was disconnected. I felt that my DNA wasn't awake. So visiting the continent for the first time in 2003 reconnected me with my ancestral heritage and also gave me a sense of purpose.
My name is David Jammers. I'm founder of the Speakers Club, and also I do etymology, which is breaking down the words and the impact that words have on our subconscious and our consciousness. Plus, I think I'm invited by Jade on the panel because my dad's South African, my mum is Jamaican, so I'm somewhere from the water. I've got a different take on everything. And what it means to me is when we start to have a shift in consciousness, where we've been given a European way of thinking about things, where difference is conflict. So we need to have a shift in consciousness where we come in control of our consciousness so we can act and move like that.
Tonya Kamara, and I am a social entrepreneur. I'm currently working on a magazine called 4U2 News Mag, and it's a magazine that's for the community, about the community. All the contributors are from the community. Reconnecting the diaspora to me, actually, it's more about people of African origin actually understanding that wherever you are in the diaspora, you are an African.
My name is Kwame McPherson, and I'm an entrepreneur. So in addition to the book that I'm now coming out in terms of having a book launch soon, I also am an entrepreneur. I'm currently in transition. I'm heading back to the Caribbean, so I'm basically more or less there. I've got 1 foot there than here. And in terms of the diaspora, it actually means us having that understanding what the diaspora actually means to us as individuals, as Fanny said, as African people, regardless of where we are on the globe or in the globe. For me personally, I had to be back where I felt comfortable, where I felt at home, where I could see more people, my people, and where I can contribute based on what I've learned from here in terms of qualification, education, and experience. So that's what the diaspora means to me. As
we were waiting, some of you have written down some interesting questions, which I'm going to direct to the panel. And as you're listening to the questions, if you haven't asked a question and you want to ask a question, we'll come to you and get any more questions for those of you that didn't write a question. So, first question by Letitia. Based on history of Africans in Europe and abroad, is it right for Africans to intermarry? Does intermarrying with whites cause problems in the future?
We can't predict what's going to happen in the future in regards to that, but for the person who makes a personal choice, in that regard, that's probably their choice. You know, me personally, it's not for me, but then I can't dictate how somebody else can live their life.
Does it have an impact on us as Africans moving forward? Yes, it does. It has an impact on us because when you're teaching your heritage, you know, we all come with heritage, whether we like it or not, okay? It's all there, whether we've explored it or not. And when you're coming with that and you're explaining that, it's a bit difficult when you have interracial relationships because one race always takes precedence, no matter what we say. It takes precedence, even though the black genes are stronger. So most children that have mixed race will have darker skin. But, you know, in the household, 9 times out of 10, the culture is a European culture.
Could I have that question again? Because I didn't get 2 points.
Based on the history of Africans in Europe and abroad, is it right for Africans to intermarry? Does intermarrying with whites cause problems in the future?
Right. Based on A.J. Rogers' history of races, this is a natural thing. Especially at a younger age, you know, the sex drive, you know, whatever we want, our young stars, through the fashion, through the media, through the music, they're going to interbreed. It's the course of nature. The problem is the consciousness in the...
In terms of my opinion, it wouldn't happen in my family. Somebody did ask me once, what would you do if your children came home with a white man? And I actually said it wouldn't happen. They said, oh, you can't say that. I said, I can. And I know it wouldn't happen because I made sure that my children knew who they are, where the generation that they came from, and how important it is to know who you are.
This kind of forum, if we had 10, 20, 30, 40 of these forums, I think it would be great because it means that we're able to talk to each other and be able to trust each other in our language. That's what I'm going to do.
I grew up speaking, you know, English was not my first language. My first language was French. I knew a little bit of German. And then towards the end, I would go to school speaking English, go home speaking Lingala because I'm from Congo. But then it's something that I didn't know, I was ashamed of. And I realized that it's really important I started to do research like for young people to know why they speak English, why do they speak French, why do they speak Portuguese, why do they speak Spanish, why do they speak Dutch. So I started doing research, where does our languages come from? And then I learned that this is not my language, it was given to me.
The next question is kind of related. It's from Mr. A. Green again. It says, diasporans are between a rock and a hard place, regarded and treated as foreigners where they reside, and even on returning to their country of origin, where is true home to be? That question of, yes, you're British when you go home, but you're not British when you're in Britain. So, yes, he wants to go
yes.
first.
First and foremost, I'm African. That's it. I was born here, but I've never ever felt connected here. And that is why I said at the beginning, I never saw who I was in the schools. People say to me, oh, you're not African, but your parents are from Jamaica. No, I'm African. Where in Africa did you come from? No, I'm African.
I'm very excited, actually, to see that you're doing such a program because it helps us to educate ourselves. So this question really for me is special in a way that I see a lot of confusion in terms of how people answer this question. Africa has got 54 different countries. Yeah. And sadly, because of lack of knowledge, or even there is knowledge, but Africa is a continent, but has 54 countries. So when people are asked, where are you from? And they say Africa, that is good, but what country?
When you're living in Europe, they quite readily tell you, go back to your country, you're not welcome here, you know. So people hear that every single day and they put up with it. You know, you don't see anybody leaving because someone's told you, no, not willingly. You know, people seem to be, you know, living with the fact that people say, oh, go back to your country. How many times people say, they hear that all the time.
For a lot of Caribbean people in particular, they don't know the full story. You know what I mean? So they're ignorant. They haven't been educated. They have to remember the education system itself it was never one that we conjured up. It probably is now, but it was something that was imposed upon us. So the sad thing is that majority of Caribbean people, we don't know our story in terms of what happened to our ancestors coming over to the Caribbean. We don't know the full extent of the story. We don't know the story. We know it, but we don't know it.
How comes people, they call me, I'm from either Nigeria, Ghana, Caribbean. When I go back to Uganda, I'm not accepted there until some of them speak my language and Swahili, not thinking I understand it. But I understand it, so I don't get accepted there either. So the bottom line is that I had to go back and see how can I go back to my roots. And even my community here is called the Banyoro. Some of them don't even accept me because I'm not fluent in the language. They say, well, did they pick me on the street? I'm active in the community, so.
I just wanted to begin by thanking the panel for their very lively response to my question. Each of you showed a lot of verve and you really liked what I asked.
I've listened to the panel and like the sister said, you know, we appreciate the panel and the way that you've discussed it, and even appreciate the fact that we're actually even having this discourse, because it's something that's just necessary, and it's not necessary once, it's an ongoing situation because we have many situations to deal with. My input would be that in dealing with our situation in terms of the diaspora, it's like the situation of the blind man and the elephant, okay? The one who's holding the tail thinks the problem is the tail. The one who's holding the air thinks the problem is the air. The one who's holding the trunk thinks the problem is the trunk. The reality is we are all holding the elephant.
We're now looking at books that were written by white people and sometimes by the colonizers. So that's why it's giving us a false perspective. We're only going to have a European perspective. It took me to talk to Afro-Portuguese people last week to find out that there was a slave taken to Portugal, and that's how religion came to Africa.
Rosy body lotion makes women of color feel good, look great, and natural all the time.
My name is Aaron Warden. I'm a nutritional therapist here at Vivo Nutrients. What we do here is we combine cutting-edge technology along with cleansing, detox and lifestyle change. The cutting-edge technology is a non-invasive scan we do that has a conversation with your body through your hand. Your body speaks through the software and provides a detailed report that highlights the level of stress on all your organs. So things like your heart, your lungs, your liver, your kidney, your brain, your breasts, your brows, your blood, your hormones, everything comes up on the scan, and your body makes recommendations on what it needs to bring it back into balance.